Okay, so I should start this video by saying that yes, I left all the apps in late 2022. And then what had happened was there was this event here in Miami that I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with it. I actually made a video about it, Art Basel, right? So Art Basel is this huge event ordeal in Miami. I think it was the first week of December. Every year they do it, and it's probably the week in Miami that has the most foot traffic, arguably, of the whole entire year. People come to Miami from all over the world for Art Basel. It's an art festival week, basically. And because there was so much hype around it, and all my friends were like, you're gonna see, there's so many interesting people, beautiful people, fun events, blah, blah, blah. I caved. And I re-downloaded the apps during Art Basel because I was curious to see who's visiting, who's around. Is there anybody who's worth, meeting, whether it's for fun or a date or whatever? And so I caved and I re-downloaded some of the apps, one of them being Bumble. So there's two parts of this story. The first part is the first guy I matched with coming back to Bumble was in fact a guy visiting for Art Basel, visiting from New York City. And it was one of those things where I was charmed by the guy in the photos. He was nice, older guy, Persian guy, again, living in New York City. And we met for coffee. And the guy I met in person, for me, was like that meme. You know that meme that's like, how it looked on Amazon, like when you ordered it versus how it arrived. I was just disappointed. I wanted the guy in the photos. The guy in real life definitely had lied about his height, definitely was heavier set than the guy in the photos. Not anything crazy, but like 10 to 20 pounds heavier, I think, than the guy in the photos. And just not as like alluring as the guy in the profile. And I'm one of those people, I don't care about age at all. I could date an older guy. I skew older. Like, it's rare for me to be into a guy who's younger, but age doesn't matter to me. It's more about compatibility, chemistry, attraction, maturity, value system, all that stuff, right? So he was an older guy. He was mid-40s, I want to say. But again, the guy in the profile I felt was charming, like an older, like a gentleman kind of thing. And in person, I just felt like the guy I met with kind of reminded me of like my grandfather's. Nice guy, but every other comment was like, well, back in my day, like it just felt very like I was being recited stories from the past and, here's what I've learned and blah, blah, blah. And I just was kind of turned off. Like, that's not the right, I want to, if I'm going to be with somebody older, I want them to teach me things. If they have wisdom that they can share with me, I want to learn. But there's also a point where it becomes, I think, overbearing, much like a grandparent figure, right? Where it's like every other thing, every other conversation piece becomes an anecdote. And I don't know, I just got turned off. I just wasn't feeling it in any way. It was like a 1-hour coffee date, done. He was also not very perceptive. Like there wasn't any obvious chemistry, but he really pushed to get my phone number, and he asked me if I was willing to move to New York City, which I thought was very dramatic to say to somebody who there isn't like a killer, insane chemistry with. And I was like, no, I'm good here. I'm not leaving. So that happened, right? And then I went about my, my merry way. He texted me, I think, about a week later. I didn't respond, which is very atypical for me. I don't like to leave people hanging. I don't like to ghost. But I was starting to feel this like burnt out, drained thing that I went through in the end for like 2 months between work and personal stuff. So he caught me at a moment where I just didn't feel like having to say, hey, I'm not feeling it, here's why. Like, I didn't feel like having that whole conversation. I didn't feel like engaging with him. So I figured if he reaches out again, then I'll tell him how, that it's not a match. But I don't feel like engaging. I didn't feel like responding. To me, it seemed obvious that there wasn't much there. I didn't feel like engaging. So about another week after that, so 2 weeks since the coffee date, I see now another guy on Bumble. By the way, at this point, I have no other Bumble matches. Nobody else. There's just that one guy. And now I see this other guy. And this guy is super charming. Like on paper and from the way he presents himself. And I've seen him over the years in Miami multiple times on these apps. And I know that he was into me because I think the first or second time I saw him on one of these dating apps, he started following me on Instagram. I never reached out, but I noticed that he followed me. And there's a thing on Bumble where there's a tab that'll show you who wanted to match with you, but you have to pay for that. I've never paid for it, but they leave like a blurry version if you don't pay. And so again, one of the first times that I saw him, I noticed that it was the same profile. Like just from the layout of the colors and stuff, I knew it was him. So I knew he was into me. On paper, he seemed like a star, like just a man about his business, educated, cultured, just presented himself well, like a refined man. But there was one big thing that was an instant deal breaker for me, which was that he had kids. Very young kids. I'm talking like toddlers and wanted more kids. And that's a huge commitment. And I don't want to date a guy with kids. I don't think I even want to ever have kids. And I feel like, I mean, I'm 31 at the time of this video. I feel like in my mind, I'm too young to even be exposed to that. Like I can barely navigate dating as it is. So for that reason alone, I never took the chance of connecting with him, of swiping right on the Tinders and the Bumbles and so on. So this time, for whatever reason, I thought about it more. And I think maybe because I've seen him multiple times on these apps, and I don't know, winter, you're like, I feel like you're more sensitive and it's like cuffing season, like you want to cuddle. And I just thought, you know what? I'm projecting all these things. Right now I'm being that person on a dating app who's almost like looking for something to, like a reason to not proceed with someone, when who knows what this connection could lead to. Like it doesn't have to be black and white, marriage material or whatever, or long-term partnership material. Like this guy seems great as a person. I should just give it a chance, right? Like I convinced myself of that basically. So it took a certain level of vulnerability to take that chance, okay? So I swipe right, we match, as I figured would happen because I knew he was previously interested, right? So we start talking and he seems cool, whatever. Within a few messages, he goes, hey, I have to tell you, I don't think we can date because I think you're talking to one of my very good friends, one of my best friends. And at first I was like, am I being punked? Like, what is he talking about? Like, or is he trying to like reject me in a nice way, but he's lying? Because in my mind, I was like, I'm not dating anybody. I think I would know if I was dating anybody. And it dawned on me that the only recent date I had been on was the coffee date from 2 weeks ago. And I realized that other guy was in the same age bracket as him, and that they were both Jewish guys, both have a home base in New York City. So I'm like, oh my God, what are the chances that they actually know each other? Like, what are the chances? I was like, there's no way. You're telling me I have 2 matches on this entire app and they are they're like very close friends? Like, there's no way. And the more we keep talking, the more I realize he is talking about that guy. And I kept saying like, I'm not dating anybody. Like, yes, I did go on a coffee date 2 weeks ago. It was not a match. I haven't spoken to the guy since. I don't know if that's who you're talking about. And this new guy, this second guy, he kind of kept grilling me about it. He was like, well, what's his name? How long ago did you meet him? Like, he was investigating, I guess, to connect the dots to see if it was really his friend. And I respected that he was looking out for his friend and he didn't want to break guy code. I get that. I totally get that. I respect that. But then I started getting annoyed because if I'm telling you I'm single, I feel like that should be enough. Like, I don't need to, what else? Do I need to show you my passport? Like, do I need to take a lie detector test? Like, so I now was getting turned off. And it's just it's not the right way to start a connection with someone that you're focused on this third party. And in my mind, I'm like, what a weirdo that guy was, that we went on one 1 hour coffee date. There was no chemistry on my end. I didn't respond to him a week later when he reached out, and he's going around telling his friends about me. And for the other guy to know it was me, I'm like, is the first guy sharing my photos? Is he sharing my name? Like, what is happening? So I got really turned off. And then after a few days, it fizzled out with the other guy once we realized they are best friends. Like, then I don't even want to get involved. So we stopped engaging in conversation, and then I deleted the app. So that was my return to Bumble experience. And I just couldn't believe how small the world is that these two guys were friends. Now, on the flip side, this is one of those things that makes you realize how important it is to just be nice to people and respectful, because you never know who knows who's going to circle back in your life somehow, who you're going to run into, at the coffee shop or in the workplace the next day. Like, it was just mind-boggling to me that it also makes you think, like, how often do you go on a date with somebody and then other people who have never met you already know all these things about you? Like, it's a little weird. It's a little creepy. Have you guys ever had a weird dating app story like this that just kind of killed your vibe and you're like, okay, it's best for me to just get rid of this app?